Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Prachi Pingle, and I'm the Mumbai editor for Citizen Matters. We are a media organization reporting on critical urban issues, ideas, and solutions for cities. Our topic for today is: should Mumbai's rising pollution really worry us, and what can we do about it? Um, our guest today is Ronak Sutaria. He is the founder and CEO of climate tech startup Respirer Living Sciences. In December 2015, Ronak was amongst the earliest technology researchers to build and deploy the first ever nationwide air quality sensor network across the country. His startup specializes in IoT and AI powered technologies for urban and rural data driven air quality policy research. The work has also been instrumental in bringing together air quality researchers, IoT and big data technologists, public health practitioners, and policy researchers on UN Sustainable Development Goals to explore the potential of this technology to solve one of the most pressing climate issues of our time. Before we begin the discussion, a quick introduction to Citizen Matters for all who may not know a lot about this platform. So, Citizen Matters is a civic media platform that serves as a knowledge exchange with insightful reports on critical urban issues. We deep dive into issues which affect our quality of life, including water, commute, public safety, air quality, governance, education, local economy, and environment. We bring together civic media, data, and diverse voices to help citizens build sustainable, equitable, and livable cities. We provide in depth information and insights on various critical urban issues to facilitate understanding and the tools for citizens to become change makers. So we can all see that how Citizen Matters would like to really talk about the issue of pollution, and also to kind of come up with some solutions where citizens themselves could also take up a few things in a proactive manner. But at the same time, we would really like to understand who really is responsible for what's going on in Mumbai at the moment, and how serious is it for all our listeners and viewers to understand that. Yeah. So very first question, really, Ronak. I mean, thank you so much for doing this for us today. And, we keep hearing about Delhi's air pollution and how bad it is and all of that. And every time one raises the issue about Mumbai's pollution, it's kind of loosely dissed as, it's not as bad as Delhi. So, how bad it really is, and what can really be done, to understand when air pollution, when the AQI index goes up and down, and we keep on saying red, red, red. But where is Mumbai really at the moment?
So I think Mumbai traditionally has been amongst the cleanest cities in India. It has featured in the 10 least polluted cities since 2019. But having said that, actually, if you track the year-on-year changes, Mumbai has actually deteriorated significantly.
Okay.
As compared to Delhi. And interestingly, Delhi actually has marginally improved. So recently, in January of this year, a few weeks ago, we did an analysis of all the 132 cities which are in the National Clean Air Program. And we found that actually Mumbai's PM 2.5 levels have actually deteriorated by almost 40% as compared to 2019. So, the levels actually have become significantly higher in terms of the PM 2.5 levels, and including the PM 10 levels also have deteriorated. And when you compare it to other cities, Delhi actually has shown an improvement of around 8 to 10%. So definitely, I mean, there is a cause of concern in Mumbai. One aspect is that Delhi has been increasing its monitoring significantly. They are nearly at around 40 monitors for the city, whereas Mumbai is still at 20 monitors. So effectively what happens is that Delhi's improvement is probably also getting picked up in a much better way. Mumbai's deterioration is being recorded. Probably it could be even worse than what it is being
And
captured, because we
I
are
was just
missing
going
a
to
lot.
ask that. Yes.
We are probably not even capturing things adequately.
Mm,
So there could be small pockets where there is some improvement, but there could be large parts of the city where there is deterioration.
mm.
So effectively, that's what the data is telling us, that Mumbai is deteriorating over the years.
And constantly we are kind of told that because it's a coastal city, we needn't to worry much about it. How solid is that argument, and how much can we really count on being close to the sea when it comes to pollution?
So from absolute numbers, Mumbai still is half or less than half of Delhi. So while the deterioration is being spotted, if you look at the absolute numbers, Mumbai is still significantly better than Delhi in winter months, no doubt. Delhi goes off the charts. Mumbai tends to remain around 100, 150 micrograms per meter cube. The safe limits being 40 micrograms for PM 2.5 levels. I usually refer to all the numbers and data in terms of absolute concentration rather than AQI levels, because
Okay.
AQI is a consolidated number and it's very hard to compare it year on year. So there is a slight difference in the way AQI is computed. And from a scientific perspective, it's not very effective tool to evaluate progress or deterioration. So anyway, so to answer your question in terms of the coastal city, yes, Mumbai sees much lower pollution levels, primarily because most of it, is blown away from the wind that comes in. So
Correct.
having said that, along with the wind, we also carry dust storms from the Middle East. And there are weeks that have been observed when, a dust storm from the Middle East will be seen on the Mumbai coast. And it stays there for a few days, so these typically need some kind of forecasting to tell the citizens that there is a dust storm coming in, which is going to keep the air significantly, deteriorated. So while the local sources are there in Mumbai, and the wind helps clear out the local pollution, it at times brings in pollution also.
Also.
Yeah.
Right. And when you say, we often talk about these numbers, but if you could, tell us a little bit about the impact of these pollutions and pollution levels and pollutants on the health of on the city, I mean, on the health of people's lives, everyday lives. How does it really impact?
So, broadly, if you look at the standards, the CPCB standard says that, I believe it's 40 micrograms is the safe limit,
Safely.
for PM 2.5. Now, the levels that we see, yearly levels, I mean, the safe standards are all for 24-hour concentration exposures. We are typically seeing many locations have reported around 90, 100 through the year. The yearly average is double of the safe 24-hour exposure averages.
That's quite
So
severe, right?
it is a significant cause of concern.
Yeah.
I mean, Delhi is reporting more than 100 for PM 2.5 levels. Just to put this in context, WHO, has said 10 micrograms exposure on a yearly basis is what is considered safe. So we are already between 4 times to 10 times
To 10
higher
times.
than what is the safe limits.
Safe limit.
Now, of course, people say that 10 micrograms is a Western concept, and no Indian city is going to achieve 10 micrograms yearly average. But, these are standards and safe limits set by a World Health Organization whom people trust. So I don't think there's any reason to believe that Indians have a higher capacity to breathe pollution. What I mean? That
Right.
just doesn't make any sense, that our
No.
bodies are more tuned
More
in.
suitable
So
for pollution.
for pollution. So I think bottom line, we are breathing, 4 times to 10 times worse levels than what is safe. So
Right.
that warrants fairly immediate. And I have a 2-year-old baby, and the pediatricians we talk to, they're saying that they're seeing 3 out of 4 kids, coming with breathing troubles, respiratory ailments in winter months. So anywhere between 60 to 70% of the kids are reporting, breathing troubles. So it's
And
a
it
huge
could
factor.
also have a long-term impact on children's health, even in their adulthood, right? I mean,
Absolutely. I mean, if you're susceptible to asthma, bronchitis, you're going to have a much worse, uh, reactions during these winter months.
right,
So it's a huge health epidemic by any
right.
standard.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I mean. We kind of don't call it the health epidemic, right? Because we kind of keep treating these ailments that come and go, and we just and we pop pills and we kind of go on. But yeah.
The
But
severity is, yeah, I mean, we've all now been tuned to what an epidemic is. COVID has told us this is not immediately fatal, but this may take a
yeah.
decade, but it does get to people.
No, which is why I kind of wanted, like, I do feel that the long-term impact of being exposed to poor, poor air, like, I think is fairly severe. I mean, it will have an impact on everyone's working life, health, and in general quality of life. So, um, yeah, I mean, when we kind of talk about pollution, we are constantly talking about either vehicular pollution or, but according to you, what are the major causes of pollution in Mumbai at the moment? Because it's not just vehicular pollution that we need to look at, I think. So,
So, the study has been done, it's been done, commissioned by MPCB,
yes,
conducted by IIT Bombay and NEERI. So it's about as scientifically rigorous as it gets,
as it gets, yeah.
and the study found that, over 70% of the particulate matter pollution is coming from road dust,
Right.
both from unpaved and paved roads. So that is a big factor in it, in Mumbai. So between road dust and construction dust, we have, I would say, over 80% of our pollution coming from these sources for the particulate matter type, which is the more harmful type.
Okay.
Of course, pollution is not made up of a single thing. I mean, there are more than a dozen pollutants which create air pollution, and things like NO2 and ozone are also fairly critical pollutants. They are known as criteria pollutants, and NOx is a direct emission from vehicles
Mm.
and from certain industrial combustion processes. So, interestingly for NOx, of course, the power plant in Mumbai, the Tata power plant, ends up becoming the big factor.
Right.
Over 35% of the NOx pollution in Mumbai is coming from the industrial sector. And vehicles take up the remaining large chunk. So vehicle is a culprit, but road dust, construction dust, industrial emissions still are a huge factor,
Mm. Right. So how do you really look at the role of agencies? I mean, whether we call it Pollution Control Board, whether we look at BMC, whether we look at the state government. How do you kind of, if you were to do a scrutiny of what these agencies have been doing and can do, how would you analyze their roles?
I think there needs to be a separation of duties, as far as air pollution goes. And currently, the monitoring and both the regulatory compliance lies with the Maharashtra Pollution Control Board,
Yes.
and that's a dual role of both making sure levels don't cross and ensuring that, everybody's complying. So I think the primary change that needs to happen is that the entire, fine-grained monitoring needs to be managed by the municipal corporation. Effectively, they are really the feet on the ground,
Right.
and the initial task of finding out where the big culprits are needs to be a combination of responsibilities between the municipal corporation and the pollution control board. So the monitoring should be exclusively handled by the municipal corporation, and the compliance should be managed by the pollution control board. And that really would be the most effective way of doing this job.
Right. Right. And do you feel that, in terms of compliance, that the Pollution Control Board needs to have, I mean, does it need to have like more powers or some kind of, like, how do you ensure that there is compliance? I mean,
So I think compliance essentially requires transparency. And transparency is really speaking going to come from implementation of credible technology. Currently, I think the big gaps in compliance is that there is a lot of opaqueness
hmm,
around how compliance is enabled in the city.
okay,
There is something known as a continuous emissions monitoring system,
right,
which industries install, at their own cost. So primarily, this is, compliance in India is a self-regulatory process. You know, it's
correct.
actually, it's like saying that, you as Prachi are going to be asked to pay income tax, and you
Hmm.
have to assess how much tax you will pay. And that's it. Whatever you assess will
Whatever,
be,
yeah,
will be treated as a final word, which is not the case. People's taxes are audited. In this case, typically what is happening is,
it's like we're relying on them
honesty of the
to
whole
have the
system.
goodness of heart and like,
Exactly. And, frankly, I would not blame the industries over here, because they work under very challenging economic circumstances,
economic.
surviving. I mean, of course, the big industries can work differently, but the small to medium scale have their own challenges. So effectively, the whole compliance process needs to be a very, two-way street in terms of, let's say, if I'm running a small, paper mill or a rubber processing plant,
Right.
the best technologies and practices need to be provided by the government. So I think, see, pollution actually is a complex topic because it is very linked to employment. It's very linked to the economic fabric of the city. I mean, where does pollution come from? It comes from a good chunk of industries. These are all small scale industries which provide employment. So you can't say that let's eliminate pollution, because you're then effectively saying let's shut down a huge chunk
Right.
of the economic sector of the
Right.
city, which is not practical.
Right.
So
Also, it is like when you say it is linked to economy, it is very deeply linked with growth and how we look at. I mean, there's always that growth versus development versus environment kind of a thing, and though we know what we should do, but yeah, it does become about livelihoods also, right? So
see, it does, but at the center of all of this, growth, economics, emissions, pollution is a very critical factor, which is called, science and technology, which can effectively reduce and eliminate, and currently very little of the science and technology is being utilized in controlling emissions. There are ways to lower emissions, but they are not being implemented across the industry, across vehicles, across construction sites. So, yeah.
correct. Yeah, at the moment, if we look at Bombay at the moment, the way every area in Mumbai at the moment is probably seeing some kind of infrastructure project being implemented, construction going on. So, could this have been planned differently or better from the government point of view? I mean, uh, could it have been done differently?
I mean, absolutely. I mean,
Because
I
we
think,
can't stop this now, right? I mean, it's like they are going to go through with all the stuff that is all the projects that are ongoing.
yeah,
So
but construction practices are very, very suboptimal right now. I mean, the way they are being executed, the amount of dust that we see is
mm,
definitely not something which needs to happen. It's basically an outcome of very poor construction practices and construction planning. You don't need to cut things, you don't need to mix things at site. A lot of
right,
this is actually an outcome of poorly planned execution. So the blame for this squarely remains with the kind of construction practices we employ, and we do that because we cut corners. We don't do enough planning, so then we come to the site and we do everything, which ends up creating a lot of noise, a lot of dust, which doesn't need to happen, and you don't see that happening in any other country, because they spend a lot of time in planning the activity, which we actually don't do. We come to the site and we start thinking. what should we do? So it's effectively poor planning and poor technology.
Right. And is there any way to kind of redo things now? I mean, uh,
I mean, it can immediately be improved right from tomorrow. If there's a real desire to do it,
mm,
first of all, you have to have fairly fine-grained, monitoring to be done. Because without that, you will really not know where the real, trouble spots or hot spots are. Mumbai is a complex city. Mumbai is a very large city. It's a highly populated city.
yes,
We are 18 million people.
yes.
So it's no small task. I mean, we are the size of some countries. So I think the kind of effort that needs to be mobilized is huge. And, not even a tiny fraction of that is being done right now.
Right. And how can we kind of use or harness technology, to for identifying polluting areas, for identifying polluting the chemicals or elements that we need to kind of separate and address differently, and how could we actually effectively provide workable solutions using technology? I know that's what you do, so if you could like tell us, like, how it
So
could be done, because we're looking at industrial pollution, we're looking at construction pollution plus vehicular for the tiny bit. Yeah.
So, it's not very difficult. It's not rocket science. Many cities have done it. London is doing an excellent job. There's a project called Breathe London, which has installed more than 150 monitoring locations at a very marginal cost of a
Yeah.
few $1,000s. Currently what the government is spending is around $200,000 per monitoring site. That's about 1.5 crore rupees, for each of those 20 sites that the government is running in Mumbai, versus what world over and many cities in India have also adopted is equipment which costs maybe $1,000 or $2,000. And that $2,000 versus, and or if you add all the parameters, it could cost you $5,000 versus an equipment which is going to cost you $200,000.
Yeah, why is that? Like, how is that?
That's because essentially the $5,000 equipment may have a little lesser accuracy. The accuracy may reduce by about 5 or 10 or maybe 15%, but the trends tend to remain fairly accurate. So what happens is your $200,000 will give you the gold standard accuracy. It may give you, it's probably the BMW quality of performance,
Right.
versus a lower cost thing will give you a slightly lesser performance or slightly lesser accuracy, but the decisions that can be made are equally good from both of these. So at a
Right.
tiny fraction of 1/10 or 1/20th the cost, you can effectively take decisions at a highly granular scale.
I
So
mean, you could install it in many more places
absolutely, I mean,
than
Bombay needs around 200 sites to be monitored, anywhere between 150 to 200 sites.
right.
The second part of your question was identifying sources, and when you put a more, a monitoring equipment which can measure maybe 5, 7 different parameters, you can have something known as a dynamic source apportionment done,
Okay.
where, you can know different chemical speciations of the pollution from the equipment. And all of this is already being done in India at several locations. So Mumbai is actually falling behind in terms of the kind of, technology it's implementing and things it's doing.
Right. And when, like, in all this, like, what is the role of citizens really? What can we Mumbaikars do, to check this, to flag it, to make agencies more accountable? What could we do as citizens here?
So, of course, sustainability and, living green is the buzz right now. I mean, everybody is wanting to live a sustainable, a minimal life. And that is in the right direction. That may still not solve the problem, but it is definitely not worsening the situation. And so I think essentially understanding and knowing what is it that you consume, and from that consumption, what is creating pollution, or what is it that is creating emissions. So if you're going to buy a car, and if you end up buying a diesel car, knowing the awareness that a diesel car, while the fuel is cheaper, it is amongst the most lethally pollutant, fuel, and the emissions from a diesel car is much higher. Or, if you are going to, I mean, there are highly polluting substances, and if you reduce consumption of some of that, then that definitely is something citizens can do. Changing their travel habits is a wise thing to do, increasing public transport,
Mm.
uh, things like that. Having said that, the big, elephant in the room is the large pollutants,
Correct.
which is construction dust, which citizens probably cannot immediately impact. If there
Mm.
is a huge metro being constructed, you as an individual can't do anything about it.
Correct.
It's going to happen. But what you can do is you can track the pollutions in your home, and you can ask questions. So if 100 of you living near the metro site, have a scientific way of knowing how much pollution are you breathing, and you
Mm.
can attribute it to the site,
Mm.
then you have a credible way of asking questions. So I think
Mm.
what citizens can do is lower their own footprint and be a more informed, citizen in terms of asking questions. So
Mm.
install very low cost equipment, or you as a housing society or a cooperative society can invest in an air quality monitor. It costs, less than $1,000 or 50,000 rupees to get
Mhm.
started, which is not a big sum.
Mm.
And you can ask questions to the agencies near your, home. So that's something citizens can definitely do.
Right. And when we ask questions, of course, we are hoping to get some kind of response or impact. In realistic terms, I mean, given how our city functions, and even if we do flag these concerns to the corporator or to the MLA, or but if you were to understand it from like pure economic or political point of view, what is your sense of what can be achieved here? I mean, given how the agencies are responding to challenges, be it climate change, be it environment, be it pollution. What do you think is, I mean, I know the Bombay High Court keeps talking about, I mean, Bombay High Court does raise this and does expect some kind of uh,
So
active
I
actions,
can,
but yeah.
I can tell you from our experience, as well
Yes.
as there are some
Yes.
global precedents.
Yes.
But, for citizens who are genuinely sincere
Mm-hmm.
and are not, into the whole rhetoric or the, holding placard or the activism mode, but are genuinely getting to the bottom of the problem, they're actually making a lot of, uh, I would say they are substantially moving the needle in terms of how these problems are addressed. A quick example is how things are happening. Of course, they're happening in the US, but US has put aside $100 million for something not what they're calling is the environmental justice program. And these funds are being dispersed directly to citizens and communities. They're bypassing agencies and giving out substantial grants running into tens of thousands of dollars directly to citizen communities. There's no reason something like that cannot happen in India.
Mm.
I mean, we as a company and as a startup, have been getting funds from the government to work on these problems. And
Mm.
we are literally a 8% team.
Mm.
So I feel that if there is a group of, 5 to 10 meaningful citizens, they can, there is no reason why they can't get funds from the government. There are a lot of funds out there available to do all
Mm.
kinds of work. I
Mm.
think it all boils down to how much of effort is being put in by the people themselves. Most people want literally 2 days of effort and then they want the problem to be solved. But
Mm.
that's not really how it's going to happen. I mean, you are going to need a lot of tenacity and patience. But if you put in that 6 months,
Mm.
then I have seen a lot of citizen communities get access to funds. They get access to, decision making power. So it's very much doable.
And if we kind of push for it, what kind of policy changes do you would be on your wish list if we were to?
I think the primary policy change is that, regulation and compliance needs to happen in real time, and it needs to happen at a very, very large scale, because today if somebody is burning a huge chunk of waste, and this happens all the time in Mumbai. They collect a huge chunk of waste and just put it to fire, because they don't want to transfer it to some other site. Things like these can be immediately fined. You can levy a fine of 2,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees. Mechanisms like these need policy support, but they also need data and they also need credible, because tomorrow, if somebody blames you as
Mm.
Prachi for burning and they come and start, finding you, it doesn't make any sense. So there needs to be a mechanism, a framework in place. But in terms of wish list, at the micro scale, we need compliance to happen literally at a neighborhood level,
Right.
so which is doable,
Mm.
but it needs technology and it needs policy to come together.
Mm. Yeah. And would you like to, share your thoughts about other forms of pollution? I mean, we obviously we talk a lot about air quality all the time, but there's other types of forms of pollution that are there. So
Yeah, I think the big one is noise actually,
noise, yes.
and Bombay is quite, it reaches high. In fact, there is a lot of initiatives underway, and we also have actually started tracking noise along with air. But I recently read a story, I think in midday, where the trains are highly, the cacophony in the trains is insane,
Yeah.
and we need to solve that. I think construction noise, transport noise is extremely high.
We've tried having those noise breaking
Barriers.
barriers
Yeah.
in BKC and all, but I
Yeah.
don't
No,
know.
I mean, those are, frankly, optics. I don't think they go to the source of the problem.
Mm.
The source is really, you have to, start again, the same thing, compliance, because people who are breaking the law need to be fined. People get away with cutting huge amounts of stone next to, in fact, in our house, the bungalow which was getting, they cut all their granite at site, and it just didn't make any sense. For 4 days, they were cutting stone day in, day out.
My God.
So, and this just requires basic awareness that this is
And with a
insane to be
small
doing
child
this.
at home, that must have been like,
Yeah, it's madness, and telling them doesn't help, because there is no regulatory framework to back you up. If I tell them it's not allowed, they'll say, show me where it says it's not allowed. We don't have such rules and laws.
I think our
So
most common argument for doing polluting things is everyone does it, right? I mean,
yeah,
yeah, I mean,
because we get away, you see. At
yeah,
the max, if I'm going to pay a 500 rupee fine, I would rather just pay that fine and get on with polluting, because the fine is so small.
so small,
So
right, right.
yeah, so I
Now,
think
yeah, no, I agree. I think when you've been stressing on compliance so much, whether it is like massive industries or whether it is like smaller units, and I think that really is the key. And I keep wanting to go back to whether the agencies are should they be more powerful to have more punitive kind of powers, or I keep going back to that because I feel that should we be scared of doing something which worsens pollution, as a citizen, as an industry, as a company, because we always look at environmental impact assessment as a hurdle in everything, right? I
yeah.
mean, we don't look at it um, as something that is beneficial in the long run to our own company or to our own industry. We look at these regulations as a hindrance in
Yeah.
our growth. So
Yeah,
there's
I mean, see, I think this whole environment term has got, branded as such a, coming in the way of other things, coming in the way of progress in the development,
yeah,
but
that
not
attitude,
realizing,
yeah.
yeah, the attitude, I think seeing the long-term impacts, the climate understanding is still very nascent.
Mm.
We work in that space, so we have an acute understanding of, the events and that we see, but effectively people are not still able to correlate that if you're coughing every day, one of the reasons is that there is higher pollution. They
Mm.
just treat it as a health issue. They'll pop some pill, they'll go to a doctor, but not realizing that Mumbai's quality of life has deteriorated so much that every second person is coughing,
Yes.
and there is a direct correlation to things that are happening around us. So that link between what our health is experiencing or how much dust are we wiping from our furniture, and is it increasing over the years, is something which people are not immediately correlating. I mean, data can tell you all this, that levels have worsened by 30%, 40%.
Right.
But I think, yeah, end of the day, it's
Yeah.
really individuals' health, individuals, quality of life, which
Yes.
is going to determine all this.
Anything else you would like to highlight or mention? I mean, I only, as my last question, I only wanted you to address two things, like, how do we link the long term impact which you just explained, to small things, short term things that happen around us, and what we as people could do, if you could, from your startup point of view, how could we use the technology as citizens, and just those two things, and if anything else you would like to add.
I think from a long term, association, just understanding that, we of course put out all these reports every January of, how much better or worse things have got, but data doesn't give that real effect. I mean, if you look at some of the other, I mean, Mumbai has also experienced significantly, I mean, right now, of course, we are in winter months, but heat waves are quite severe, and Mumbai's humidity combined with heat waves creates this extremely fatal situation. But understanding the frequency of those things, in terms of and the source and the reasons for that being the higher emissions that are happening, linking that, because the PM, there is more PM, there is more ozone in the air, it's leading to worse situations. I mean, see, floods Mumbai experiences in its monsoon months, and we directly say that, okay, our, the stormwater drains are not good, etc., etc. So flooding is a very visual thing, that Mumbai has got flooded and it makes
Yes.
headlines.
Yes.
But unfortunately, air, does not have that visual effect that water has.
Yes.
But from a long-term perspective, we have a far more severe air emissions problem than a flooding problem, because that is lasting the whole year versus flooding, which is only in monsoon. Your last question around, what is it from the kind of work we do that can help, and we basically make very, very, scientifically validated but affordable and low cost monitoring solutions. And along with the monitoring, we also have, management and mitigation technologies that we build. So effectively, first, starting with understanding where the big pollution culprits are, are these industries, are these construction sites, and then working with them in mitigation is really where the answer is. And this answer is going to lie at the corner of every street, every neighborhood. It's not like, the cabinet minister in Delhi or the environment minister in Mantralaya will sit and pass a law. This is a battle which is going to be fought, every few hours, every few days, in every corner. So preparing for that, I think, is
As
very
they
needed.
say, no, that it has to be every nook, every corner, every
Yeah,
street, sort of a thing.
exactly. I mean, pollution is a fight which is going to be fought literally, every at that scale. So
Right.
that's the story. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. And what we would love to do is, once we put this up, for our viewers to see, if we get any kind of feedback on, action points, and, what we could do, I would love to kind of bounce it back to you, and maybe have little, some kind of
Oh, happy
responses.
to. I mean, we are always active on Twitter, and you can tag
I
us,
know,
and
I know,
we're
you're
happy
very
to.
active on Twitter. Yes.
So yeah, I think that would be the best way to take it
Yeah.
forward. And Citizen Matters, of course, I've been knowing about the work, Mira's work, since the last half a decade. So always happy to
Yes, yes. Thank you
participate.
so much. Thank you so much for this.